There we go. Yeah, so my brother and I were just having the conversation about the non-aggression principle about starting a biz. My argument was if someone just hated someone and they saw a better way to make that product better than the person they hated, and they started the business making that product better just to put their person they hated out of business, that would violate the non-aggression principle.
Okay, so I'm going to push back on that and say that it may be a despicable thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
but that does not necessarily mean that it also violates the non-aggression principle.
But in what way? That person is depriving that person of their livelihood just for the mere fact that they hate them, not because that person just wants to. Like if they just wanted to be a multi-billionaire, I don't care about that. That's what they want, but they are purposely hurting someone else's livelihood for their own personal gain.
Okay, so let's take a step back and
Hmm.
define the non-aggression principle. Um, if you'd like to give me a definition that's suitable for you, we can go from there.
That as long as your actions doesn't maliciously hurt someone else, and, and you don't and within your actions don't cause like billions of dollars of damage, then it's okay. If you want to do it for your own personal gain, if you want to make billions of dollars, if you want to create something better for mankind, that's all good. But as long as you don't maliciously mean to hurt anyone, then it's all good.
Okay, so I think that's an incomplete definition of it, and it breaks down. Here's why. You said as long as you don't mean to hurt someone, you can
Mal-
do basically whatever you want. So
yeah, maliciously.
okay, so that's a pretty non-standard definition of the non-aggression principle. I don't know any mainstream libertarians who would define it that way. I'm just pulling this from Wikipedia. The non-aggression principle is an ethical stance that asserts that, quote, aggression is inherently illegitimate. And aggression, for the purposes of the NAP, or the non-aggression principle, is defined as initiating or threatening the use of any and all forcible interference with an individual or an individual's property. So I think maybe we are we're debating over two different terms, and I think it's important for us to figure out what we're actually talking about. I think if we want to talk about the non-aggression principle, the pretty accepted definition is to say that aggression is defined as the use of or the threat of violence towards another person or their property. Would you accept that definition?
But would you define as force, as in physically with the gun or through lawyers and other such means, which financially bankrupt someone else? Because that is kind of using force, is because you're forcing them to bring to court, you're forcing them to do all these things to defend themselves. It may not be physical with using your fist or using the gun, but you are still forcing them to come to court and other such things to defend themselves.
I think if you could prove that someone was throwing false lawsuits at you, and you were in some kind of system that required you to spend your own money to defend yourself, maybe you've got a case there, but I think that's kind of a corner case.
What about, I do have a real life case.
Well, let's take the example case that you were talking about. The person who, so Albert hates Bob, and Bob runs a pizza shop.
And just say he has just basically this, kind of like with the McDonald's brothers, just has like a super way of making pizza.
Mm-hmm. And so Albert figures out, he figures out what the consumer wants, and he makes a better product than Bob. Mm-hmm. And he does so let's say for the sake of argument, because he really hates Bob and wants to get back at him and run Bob out of business and run him out of town, maybe. I would say that so long as he's not using physical violence against Bob or threatening physical violence or using violence through some intermediary, say the state or some legal loophole process. But I would say, barring all those things, Albert is not violating the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle, it's not violated or not violated based on whether you mean to harm someone or not. It's based on whether you actually do harm them. And it's not based on whether you hate someone or not. It's based on whether you actually perform measurable damage to someone or their property.
The thing is that I said that Albert just hates Bob, and Bob did all he can to keep his business afloat because like this was his idea, so he fought hard to keep his idea, but Albert just kept on pushing against Bob, and then basically they put Bob in the poorhouse. It robbed him of his livelihood. It basically put him from a very well-meaning standard and put him in the bottom. So it hurt him physically. It hurt him his mental capabilities because going through such a struggle is not as bad as like going to war, but still it can really run someone ragged through them in the mind and hurt them mentally.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that there aren't negative impacts on Bob, but the question at hand is whether or not Albert is aggressing against Bob's person or his property.
But his property is the livelihood in which that pizza, the idea of like how to make the run a pizza joint was a brand new concept that he made up.
Okay, so if he had some kind of, maybe they live somewhere where there's some patent system and he has a patent on how to make a particular kind of pizza and Albert violates that. I suppose you got a case there, but what I'm trying to point out is that Bob does not have a right to the consumer's money. You keep saying that Bob's property is his livelihood or the success of his business, but what that necessarily implies is that Bob has a right to the money of his customers, which he does not.
He doesn't have the right because if I don't like Albert's pizza, hold on, we're getting confused. So Albert is the one who has the original. No, yeah, Bob is the original idea. Yeah, that Bob doesn't have the right because if I don't like Bob's pizza, I could just go to Pizza Hut or to another pizza joint.
Exactly. So he doesn't have the right to any of the customers' money. He only receives it voluntarily because he produces a product that some of the customers want.
Yeah, so exactly. Because
Albert produces a better product, whether he means to run Bob out of business or not, he's not actually taking any of Bob's property. He's just
but for the consumer, for us, the consumer who probably don't know Albert's intentions, it's great for us. He's offering a better product, probably at a same or smaller price. So for us, the consumer, it is very beneficial for us. But if you could prove in a court of law that he did this for the sole intention to physically, financially, and mentally hurt Bob, then yes, that does violate the non-aggression principle because he did it with the intent to hurt him, not by jabbing him with a knife or something or shoot him, but to financially hurt him, to put him in the poorhouse, to make him mentally unstable. Because exactly like in 1980, like in George Orwell's 1984, for the most part, the party does not act violently against the people because it basically has brainwashed the people. So the party has mentally hurt the people. Violence does not necessarily mean in the physical form. It can also mean in the mental form.
I mean, I suppose if you were like keeping someone locked up against their will and brainwashing them, or
imagine if they are locked up. It's just they've been indoctrinated since birth. So in actuality, even though they do not themselves know it.
I think we're getting a little off topic here.
Yeah.
I think what you need to prove to me is that Bob has a right to the customer's money.
I'm saying he has right to his money. I'm just saying is that in a court of law that it was proved that Albert, with the full intent of financially hurting and mentally hurting Bob, then Albert would be punished in that court of law for with the intent to financially and mentally hurt Bob. What I'm saying is that if you can never prove in a court of law, then no charges can ever be brought against Albert. But if it was proved, like if they found like audio journals and like written journals that were somehow like leaked to the press that Albert did with the full intent and for no other reason, just to hurt Bob, then yes, Bob should not then automatically get all of Albert's business. That's for the consumer to decide. But for Albert himself, he should be punished by the law.
No, I'm totally willing to concede that Albert is a jerk and did it 100% to run Bob out of business. That still would not violate the non-aggression principle, because the non-aggression principle is not concerned about how people feel about each other. It's concerned about people's property. And so you still have not shown that Albert has aggressed against Bob, his person, or his property. He may have made life difficult for Bob, but that doesn't mean that he has taken Bob's property. Let's say that I have some property and I don't visit it very often, and there's a well.
Yeah.
And you're a very poor person, and you don't have access to any water, and you've been using my well for years and years and years. And someday I decide, hey, I'm going to actually sell my property to a development firm, and they're going to put a condominium there.
Yeah.
And you go back one day and there's construction there and you can't get to your well.
Yeah.
According to your argument, you could now take me to court because I've just taken away something that is valuable to your livelihood.
No, but did you mean it to hurt me? Did you like secretly hate that peasant down there? Did you? I hate him. I want to see him suffer. I'm going to sell this.
What I'm pointing out is it doesn't matter, because it's not your property to begin with. And so there's no way that I could aggress against your property if your property isn't in question. But so if Albert goes over to Bob's shop and sabotages his pizza ovens or steals his...
Oh, yeah, no, that's damage to property, of course.
But Bob does not have a right to the customer's money.
No, it doesn't.
If we're talking about the non-aggression principle, then that's the primary issue of concern here.
Okay.
So I think until you can prove that Albert is harming Bob or Bob's property, that you've got no case, and you need to concede that this is not a violation of the non-aggression principle. Now, it may be a violation of, moral principles or just common decency. I'll totally give you that. But whether or not someone performs an action that harms someone else's business based on whether they want to run them out of business or not, that doesn't matter.
But then what about slander laws in the United States and most of the Western world, that if you spread false rumors against someone, or you expand upon the truth against someone, and it financially hurts them or hurts them in a mental state, you can legally put a charge against them that this exaggeration of the truth, this slander has caused me mental harm or has caused me financial anguish. And there has been many cases where like very unflattering photos of celebrities, like very unflattering, have been leaked to the press, and those celebrities have successfully sued said individual because it hurt them financially, because people are like, oh, Bruce, this celebrity did that, and their record did not sell as much, or the concert didn't sell as much, which allowed them to say, this person hurt me financially.
Yeah, okay, let me respond to that. I think that slander laws are, how should I say this? I don't think that slander laws are just. Let me explain why. I have a right to my own thoughts, correct?
Yes, you do.
And do I have a right to express my thoughts vocally?
as long
Right
excluding like yelling fire in a crowded theater, which that does harm people.
Okay, well, I think that's a separate discussion. I think
Yeah.
I think you have a right to your thoughts and you have a right
Yes.
to your own speech, provided that you are you're not on someone else's property and they have some law against yelling fire in their theater or
it calls for direct violence, like you point to someone and say to a mob, say get them, and the mob automatically attacks that person. That quote unquote within a few seconds, your speech has caused physical harm to someone. So as long as physical harm isn't a direct effect, then yes, you have your freedom to speech.
Okay. Yeah, so in the case of slander laws, what that's essentially saying is that your right to your own thoughts and words are less than someone else's right to their own reputation. And I don't think that people have ownership of a reputation, because what is a reputation if it's not just the thoughts that are in other people's minds? So a celebrity does not have a right to own the public's opinion of them. They don't have a right to own people's thoughts in the people's own minds. So I'm not quite sure where you're going with slander laws, but I would say that people have a right to their own opinions and thoughts.
Because I was just throwing out like different times that people have financially said this person has hurt me financially because of their quote unquote free speech and has caused me mental or harm. But I was kind of, before I talked about this, I was going on with a real court case on the non-aggression principle, which a few companies were found to be physically harming their customers.
Okay, well, physically harming their customers and driving a competitor out of business is different.
What I'm saying is that for the purpose, they knew what they were going into. Like I said, that when Albert was trying to hurt Bob, is that he wanted basically to hurt Bob mentally. He knew that by doing his action, selling his product, he would hurt Bob. Albert knew he would hurt Bob.
Yeah, but the method that he does that is not in violation of the non-aggression principle. He simply creates a better product.
But for the reason, but he knew full welling.
Yeah, but here's the deal.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the reason. And we're just going to keep going around in circles until you can prove or present a case that there is some property of Bob's that is being aggressed against. Now, we can have a discussion about something other than the non-aggression principle. But if we're going to talk about the non-aggression principle, you need to present a case for Albert aggressing against Bob's property. And you've still not done so.
Yeah, it's true. Is that he does not have a right to as long as he did not patent it, kind of like with the McDonald brothers case, is that Albert did not truly aggress against his property, because as we both agree, and I know that full well know, is that Albert and Bob do not have a right to their customers' money, because we the consumer can say, screw you, Albert and Bob, we want to go to Pizza Hut and other such burger joints. But the thing is that it violates, because for the sole reason he aggressed, he took away the livelihood and the mental stability of Bob.
Does Bob have a right to his own livelihood?
He has a right to strive for it. He has as Thomas Jefferson's.
He has the right to.
He has the pursuit of happiness. He does not have the right to happiness.
And Albert hasn't taken away that. He hasn't taken away Bob's right to continue to make a better business. He's just presented a better product that consumers want more.
That is true. Is that, I said, for us consumer, it is great that he has made in advance pizza delivery technology for us the consumer. What I'm saying is, is that since he did, through his actions, financially hurt Bob for the purpose of hurting him financially and mentally, then he should be brought to charges against him.
Okay, maybe, maybe depending on the legal system where they live, that's the case, but it's not in violation of the non-aggression principle. Maybe it's in violation of some other state law, but it's not in violation of the non-aggression principle.
But he was using force, the force of...
The force of what? Force of not liking him?
No, he was force.
What was he? So if he was using force, then he would have had to harm Bob or Bob's property. Bob's person or his property.
Financially, because Bob was...
No. There's a difference between Albert stealing money from Bob, which would be taking Bob's...
Yeah, that's stealing.
And just taking his customers because he produced a better product. Bob does not have a right to his customers, and so Albert is not aggressing against Bob's property.
And Albert does not have the rights to the customers coming from Bob to Albert. Neither of them have the rights to that money.
Right, so we both agree on that. So that naturally follows that Albert is not taking his property.
Wait, hold on a second. Oh, sorry about that. What I was saying is that with the non-aggression principle, it says we should the definition according to Wikipedia again, it says the non-aggression principle is the ethical stance that asserts that aggression is inherently illegitimate. Aggression for the purpose of the non-aggression principle is defined as initiating or threatening the use of any and all forcible interference with an individual or individual's property. So it's individual or individual's property. So he's using force against the individual. He's using the force of Bob. That's was because if you know anybody who started a business, have a brand new idea, that's theirs. And throughout history, people will strive to hold on to their idea. And the force that he's using is picking away at his idea. And for the mental stability of the individual, that hurts the mental psyche of the vast majority of human beings, that someone is stealing what is yours.
No, but
when
you say stealing, you're implying theft. There is no theft here.
No, he did not really steal, kind of like, well, it all depends on your definition of steal, because
theft.
Exactly,
taking someone else's property without their permission.
Without their permission. Well, Bob did not exactly want Albert to take his piece of joint idea.
Yeah, but what was Bob's property that Albert was taking?
His property is that. I think we're just running in circles again, because I said,
what I is that there was no property that was stolen.
No, really.
So there is no force. So it's not in violation of the non-aggression principle.
But the way I see is that all forcible interference with the individual or individual property. It doesn't say just the individual property. It also includes the individual.
Yeah, your person.
The person. So
like physical violence against someone would violate the individual.
I said is that it never say only physical. It just says initiating or threatening the use of any and all forcible interference, which that can include physical or the mental. And
okay, so I'm going to say that it really does mean physical. It doesn't just mean anything that a person defines. So let me give you an example.
Yeah.
Let's say that I come up to you and I say, I am intergalactic warlord of all, and I need you to move out of the state because your mere presence in this state violates my own mental sanity.
But how is this state your property?
It doesn't matter. You're violating my mental sanity by being in California.
I do?
Yeah. So you're violating my individual because I have a mental condition and I've decided that it's going to violate it by you being near me.
Can you prove that in a court of law?
Well, can you prove your example that Bob has a right to his own mental livelihood and stability that Albert is taking away?
Like I said, is that if you could prove it in a court of law, then yes. I'm
not so much concerned about what's provable in a court of law, because historically a lot of things have been, quote, proven in a court of law that are completely absurd. So let's leave that off the table for right now.
Okay.
So let's get back to my question, which is,
yeah,
what is Bob's property that Albert is taking away?
In a sense, he is not thieving it, but like I said, that's true. If you go on that strict definition of the non-aggression principle, he did not really violate it because he did not use any thievery to take away his property, because because Bob did not patent his pizza idea and Albert stole it.
Yeah.
The thing is that for the reason of his business, he hurt him financially and mentally, then it does violate it.
No, you're making just a naked assertion there. It doesn't follow that because someone doesn't like someone, that their actions suddenly violate a principle that the very same actions wouldn't otherwise violate. So what we've already agreed on is that Albert's actions do not violate the non-aggression principle. Now, what you're saying is his actions don't violate it, but the intent behind the actions somehow causes it to violate the non-aggression principle. And what I'm saying is that the non-aggression principle is not concerned with the intent behind an action. It's concerned with the actual physical action.
The actual physical action.
It's not concerned with motives or reasons behind an action. It's concerned with whether you've actually hurt someone or their property.
They hurt someone or their property, like I said.
Yeah, so let's say that Albert doesn't care one way or the other about Bob, and let's say he doesn't even know that Bob's there, and he opens up a pizza shop and it runs Bob out of business.
Yeah.
Would that be in violation of the non-aggression principle?
No, because that's the nature of business, is that...
Okay, so it's not in violation of it because there's no force against Bob.
There was no ill force. There was no malice.
It has nothing to do with ill force. It has to do with force.
Yeah, with malice, intent.
And so if we agree that if Albert has no knowledge of Bob or Bob's business and is not in violation of the non-aggression principle, then it naturally follows that the very same actions, when done with ill motives, are still not in violation of the non-aggression principle, because the non-aggression principle as defined is not concerned about intent. It's concerned about what is actually done.
Yeah, kind of looking down the non-aggression principle, that's kind of like almost the grandfather of the modern day market system, John Locke. He basically said, being all equal independent, no one ought to harm another in his life, health, liberty, or possessions.
Yeah.
So basically, that all being equal, as I said, is that if Albert just started a pizza joint just because he wanted to start a pizza joint and he did not mean to hurt Bob, Albert did not mean to hurt Bob, then that's just what happens. But in this equal footing, Albert says, I hate Bob, I just want to hurt him. He is altering, he is hurting his life, his health, his liberty. Just for the purpose of hurting him.
Yeah, but he's not, though. He's not aggressing against him. Okay, let's say that that there is a doctor out there who develops a procedure to cure some form of cancer.
Yeah.
And there are 1,000,000 people who have that form of cancer.
Yeah.
If that doctor decides to go on vacation or retire and stop performing that procedure, by your definition, he is aggressing against those people because um, he's withholding something that those people need in order to survive.
But did he mean it with malice? Like I said, all there being equal, as in it says that the equal of that thing is that he meant nothing. I have this, and I'm just not going to use it anymore. He did not mean that is the equal part of it, that he had property, and that's the equal part, and independent, and he did not give them cancer. That people, by the luck of the draw, those people got that cancer. And with his property, he has every right to give that cure to them or not.
Exactly. And so Bob has, the ability to make pizzas.
Yeah.
And Albert figured out a way to make better pizzas. And so Albert, by making better pizzas, he's not aggressing against Bob's person, even though it does have a negative impact on Bob. There's no denying that.
Yeah.
And it makes Bob's life worse. And it means that Bob gets less of his business. And, bad things happen to Bob. But that doesn't mean that Albert is aggressing against Bob's property or Bob's person.
But if the aggression comes through the intent.
No, it does not.
How does it not?
Explain to me where in the definition of the non-aggression principle it is concerned with intent.
It is initiating or threatening the use of any and all forcible interference. Initiating, as in him wanting to hurt him mentally and financially, was the initiating, because Albert did not like Bob, and so he initiated opening a business with the intent to hurt him.
Yeah, but you're still not showing me where the non-aggression principle talks about intent. So let's say this. Let's say Albert hates Bob.
Yeah.
And he has plans to open up a pizza shop and run Bob out of business, but he ultimately decides not to. But he still hates Bob. Is he violating the non-aggression principle? Because his intent is to run Bob out of business. Let's say that he continues to scheme and to plan how to run Bob out of business, and he does this for years and years and years and years. But never does it. Was he in violation of the non-aggression principle all those years because his intent was to run Bob out of business?
No, because in the end, he did not interfere with the individual or the individual's property.
Exactly. So we've just established that it's his actions, not his intent or motive.
But isn't that behind any action? Is that to move my arm, my brain needs to send a signal down to my muscle to send electrical signals to contract to move my arm towards me. So my mind needs to think before any action is taken. So before we can do any action in this world, we need to think. We need to have intent before any action is ever taken in this world.
Okay, I'm not disputing that. I don't know what that has to do with this, but
I'm saying is that with anything in the world is that you have to have intent. Like, it's true. It's like, why does anyone get married? Because most of the time they like that person. So their intent to marry is because they like that person. The physical action of marriage for 99% of the cases is because they like that person. True?
Yeah, I still don't see where you're going with this. So let's close it with this.
Mm-hmm.
The non-aggression principle, as defined, is not concerned with intent. It's concerned with people's bodies, their person, and their property. And Albert is not violating either of those things of Bob's. He may be making life difficult for Bob. He may be taking away Bob's great idea. But Bob doesn't have a right to his customers' money. He doesn't have a right to the knowledge of how to make a good pizza. So why don't we throw this up on your YouTube channel and we'll see what your commenters think.
Yeah, but okay, I said argue mine's intent, yours. So just to close it off, is that my argument was intent, is that his intent was to hurt. In the end, he did hurt, and therefore it violates. And you say since intent does not matter, it's only since he does not have the right to his customers' money, so that's why Albert did not infringe upon the non-aggression principle, since he did not violate that principle.
That's
did
right.
not physically steal. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so just to make sure that we agree on this, can I bring up an actual court case before we close out?
I've actually got to go. But
oh, you do? Okay.
This is fun, though.
Yeah.
I appreciate chatting. I'm sorry if I got a little bit overzealous in moments, but.
Oh no, you did. Trust me, if you go to some other live streams, like with YouTubers who like have 100,000 subscribers, trust me, they sometimes yell, cuss, and other such things. So trust me, you were pretty tame compared to others.
All right, great. Well, maybe we'll have another one of these in the future.
Good chat with you.
All right, man. Have a good night. See ya.
Good night.